Martha Stewart Living Radio. Learn something new every day. Martha Stewart Living Radio, Sirius XM 110. Welcome back to Living Today on Martha Stewart Living Radio, Sirius XM 110.
Welcome back to Living Today here on Martha Stewart Living Radio, Sirius XM 110. I couldn't resist it during the break. I had to have one of Jacques Torres' special holiday-themed truffles, and I think I picked one that was juniper berry. And I saw oatmeal cookie on there as one of the flavors. I saw pumpkin spice, like a pumpkin pie kind of flavor. So I had to sneak over. I almost got caught out there, so to speak. But I'm back. I'm Chris Halseld, your host here on Living Today this afternoon. Welcome back. It's 2 p.m. here on the East Coast, 11 a.m. in the Pacific. And don't forget, coming up next hour at 3 Eastern here, Alan Katz is going to be joining us for a special holiday cocktail roundtable. And joining Alan is Simon Ford of Pernod Ricard and Plymouth Gin here in the U.S., and Dave Wondrich, the author and cocktail historian. And we're going to kind of be taking a look at I think, this is the way I envision this. We're going to take a look back at the year that has just ended, kind of a reminiscing look, and then also a look at the history of cocktails and kind of those holiday kind of traditions for all of our guests, and hopefully get some good stories out of them. So stay tuned next hour for that here on Living Today. But right now, I am joined in the studio by Brian Kelly, who also is known as the Points Guy. He's the points guy, and it has nothing at all. It's not a guy you run into in like some dingy bar, and he's got a notebook, and he's, you tell him who's going to win the Giants game. He's the points guy. He's founder of thepointsguy.com. And Brian, first off, welcome to Living Today.
Thanks for having us.
And what you talk about is, where everybody is really wrapped up in this idea of frequent flyer miles and points programs and rewards programs, and it's kind of like this extra layer on top of travel that I think for a long time people do. I mean, I'm still pretty new to it, and I think a lot of people kind of they participate, but I don't think they really pay attention to the comings and goings and the ins and outs of that. So that's what we want to do today. We want to talk about that, kind of explore that, and we also want to take calls from people and kind of help them out, I think, and give out really kind of good, timely advice, especially because here we're kind of hitting the end of the year, and so I imagine that people are thinking about maybe trying to get away, or might have to travel, or they might have to use these things. I don't know if these things tend to roll over. Maybe your plan doesn't. I don't know.
Yep, some do, and elite status is a big thing this time of year.
Elite status.
Yes.
So call us if you're looking for elite status. It's 866-675-6675. That's 866-675-6675. We're talking to the points guy, Brian Kelly, here on Living Today. So exactly, where's a good place to start? How are we collecting travel points and frequent flyer miles?
I think the most important thing to get across is that points and miles equal money.
Okay.
I think once people realize that this is actually a personal finance issue, whether you have a family or whether you're a business traveler, being smart about your points means more money in your pocket. So, and a lot of people always say, well, I don't travel a lot, so I can't get in on this game. But
right. That's exactly what I would say. I'd be like, well, I don't travel so much, so.
And I would say, do you eat? Do you spend money? Do you shop?
Right.
Because, these days, those are the most lucrative ways to be getting points and miles. So, I think in the new year, I definitely recommend people put together a strategy and have fun with it. It is a little bit of time, to understand the different rules, and it is a little bit confusing. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually fun, and, who doesn't love to travel?
Well, I just did a quick look around the room. I think that everyone in this room likes to travel. Naomi travels, well, a world traveler. I mean, mainly you nowadays you travel from the kitchen to the changing table to the. She has a 1-year-old son.
But you know what? That's all the more reason why we need points, because when we travel, we've now got a baby in tow,
right.
and
luggage. Yeah,
exactly. So the extra points and being members of these things sometimes mean, because we do have an airline credit card, that we get to check luggage for free, which means that we can lug the baby around instead of the luggage, which is so much
I can't wait
nicer.
to find out if babies get smaller passports.
I'm actually just applied for the first passport. I'll let you know.
See, there it is. I knew it was only a matter of time. So, but what So even if we're not a frequent flyer, we can be collecting and using these. But how is that? Because how am I going to accumulate points and miles if I'm not flying?
So the first thing, and I think it's topical this time of year, with holiday shopping, you can get tons and tons of miles and points just from shopping online. And I personally, I hate going in the crowded stores. So if you shop online from home, there are huge bonuses. You can get up to 30 miles per dollar spent. At certain retailers. Apple a couple weeks ago was offering 10 points per dollar on all their purchases. So that, iPad that's $600, that's 6,000 miles, and free tickets start at 12,000, one way. So, for doing the things that you were going to do anyway, you can start really stockpiling. So
it's funny. I was just going to ask that because we say so that's 6,000 miles, and then you said that the tickets start 12,000 one way. So I mean, these the kind of the idea of the miles, it's just it's kind of it's just a term.
Right.
It doesn't equate to an actual mile, right?
Well,
not to kind of dumb it down too much.
Yeah.
But I really have always kind of wondered. It's just a term. It's just a unit of
currency. It's totally a unit of currency. The miles come from most frequent flyer programs do actually give you 1 mile for every mile that you fly.
Right.
Which doesn't really make any sense when you think about it, because you can fly from, New York to LA and you're going to get 2,500 miles. And that can be a really cheap ticket. But if you fly from, New York to Boston, the ticket price can be the same, and then you only get 300 miles.
Right.
It doesn't really make sense, but in general, that's where the whole concept of miles came from.
Right. But the redemption levels kind of are higher than actual.
But
it wouldn't cost. We're not 12,000 miles from Los Angeles.
Right. We're only 2,500.
Right.
But the weird thing is, if you redeem the free flight to Los Angeles or Boston, in most programs, it's the same amount of miles to redeem because it's all within the same country. So there are weird things like that don't make sense, but you can use to your advantage if you know the ins and outs, which is what I teach people about on my blog.
All right, and that blog is thepointsguy.com. We're talking with Brian Kelly, founder of thepointsguy.com. And I want to hear from you guys at 866-675-6675. I want to hear your questions about what to do with your extra frequent flyer miles and travel points. And maybe you need some tips on good ways to accumulate them and maybe how to manage them and things like that. So please call us at 866-675-6675 here at Living Today. So how does this work? So I get the idea that you can go shop and buy things now. And I agree. I'm like you, that I am buying things online because I try and avoid the store experience. And unfortunately, this next couple days, I'm going to have to actually go into a few stores. And even already in my experience, my blood pressure went up as soon as I did. But even in a store and online, doesn't matter. We can accumulate. So there's that one way where you say that it's coming from, like, say, an actual company or store, like Apple had a deal where they were giving away points or miles. But then there's also a lot of these are tied in through credit cards.
Yep. Credit cards are the most lucrative way to rack up points. 2011 has been the year of the credit card bonus. In the past, 10, 15, 20,000 miles to get a new credit card was good. This year, 50,000 has been the standard, and we even saw one credit card, the British Airways Visa, go up to 100,000 miles just for getting the credit card.
Wow.
Which was an incredible value. There's rumblings that may come back. So basically, the credit card companies know that people are really incentivized by miles. So they offer them, in order for you to take out their credit card.
I mean, I know I have, my sister will do this, and I think I have a very good friend who does this, where he will offer to pay for something because, let's say if we're out to dinner or, we're going to buy concert tickets. And he'll be like, well, why don't you guys give me money and I'll put it on this card because I can use the miles.
I'm that person too.
Yeah. And so, but that's one of the ways to do it. But of course, all this, it's funny but I think it's worth mentioning that I think a lot of this incentivizing with the miles is also because of, the way we use credit cards. I think the way we look at credit cards is changing.
Right.
And so there also kind of is this responsibility that kind of has to come along with that.
Yeah, I never recommend people, if your finances are in disarray, if you're carrying balances, don't go with mileage cards because they do have higher APRs.
Okay.
However, if you've got your finances in line, every time you use $1, I just tell people, imagine every dollar you spend, you're throwing 3 cents in a trash can if you're not getting miles. So I never use cash. I literally only use cash if I'm like coerced into doing it. Put everything on credit
I like how
card.
someone else. I'm trying to imagine a situation in which you've been coerced into using
Cab
cash.
driver, like 2 years
Oh,
ago
that's
in New
true,
York, the
that's
cab
true.
drivers, but now they've been forced into submission, so they all take.
I don't know why. You know, people don't know this, but you can pay for a cab with a credit card or a debit card.
Oh, absolutely.
And but a lot of the cabbies didn't want you to do that.
They still do the funny business.
Yeah, they said it was pretend that they were broken, but they can't do that anymore. And,
Yeah.
and they fixed all the broken ones.
Exactly.
So fear not. But so I was just thinking, how many miles do you accumulate in a year personally? I mean, you must keep a tally.
Well, this year I've gotten 8 new credit cards. Just from credit cards alone,
Yeah.
I've gotten over 600,000 miles.
Okay.
So just to put that in perspective, it's usually about 100,000 miles to go business class to Europe.
Okay.
So just from getting credit cards, I've gotten enough for 6 round-trip business class tickets to Europe. You know, that would be 12 in coach, and that would just be a ton of, domestic flights.
Yeah.
And that's just from the credit cards. I fly extensively as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just important. Not all the credit cards are the same, too. So people should understand, definitely do your research before taking out a credit card, whether it's the airline one or an American Express or Chase card. There's differences with each of the programs.
We're talking with Brian Kelly, a travel points expert, founder of thepointsguy.com, and we're talking about travel points and frequent flyer miles. Now, all of these things are they tied in? Is it like the airline specifically will tie in with a specific card?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm totally playing like the novice on this, but
Right.
but I mean that's kind of how it goes, right? Like there's the Delta. Well, we work with somebody, and then or there'll be that's a special card for that.
Yep. So the concept is each airline ties in with one credit card issuer, and when you get that credit card, you're banking all of your points to that airline, right? So in order for to pay you for your loyalty, they'll give you free bags, they'll give you boarding, lots of valuable perks. Now, what I recommend most people to get is a transferable points card. So
Right.
like an American Express membership rewards or Chase Sapphire Preferred is probably the best card on the market right now. These credit cards actually let you accrue points into a central pool and then transfer them to either hotel, airline, and many different airlines. So instead of
Okay.
just putting all your eggs in one basket with one airline, you accrue in the central pool. So it just gives a lot more flexibility when it comes time to use those points. You're not just stuck with one airline or one alliance.
So when you help people, what is the biggest question that people have for you?
I think a lot of times people are like, okay, this credit card thing sounds good, but isn't it going to ruin my credit? And I think in general, you can get, if you've got good credit, you can get a couple credit cards a year with pretty, it's going to be a temporary 2 to 5 point hit off your credit score, but credit scores are out of 850. So as long as you've got good credit, a couple points is not going to.
And as long as you maintain it.
Exactly. And and the weird thing with getting credit is if you open up new credit cards and pay them off on time, your score actually goes up. So yeah, you take a short-term hit, but if you're being smart and getting huge bonuses, like I said, this year I've gotten 600,000 points. I mean, it's hard for me to even put a value on it. Like conservatively, that's $6,000
Right.
in travel that I got just from having a good credit score and knowing, how to handle them all.
But how now? You got 600,000 points this year. But I mean, is there a clock ticking on that? Or I mean, do these things have expirations? Do you have a window that you have to use? Is it a quick window, or does it vary by the airline and the vendor?
It's not that confusing. Some do have expirations. So what I recommend is I use awardwallet.com. It's a free service, so you can
Okay.
just type in all your different accounts, and Award Wallet will track your balances on one screen, because sometimes it can get a little confusing with accounts all over the place.
Right.
And they'll actually email you if your miles are going to expire. The thing that most people don't realize is you don't have to fly to keep your miles active. You can, like I said, go through the shopping portals and if you buy a single iTunes song for $1 on most frequent flyer programs, that'll reset the clock of expiration.
Oh, okay.
So as long as
So
you
it's
know
just
these
it's
little
just
things.
about through inactivity.
Exactly. You never want to leave them inactive for usually 12 to 18 months. But all you have to do is buy a single song on iTunes and then the clock resets.
See, that's really interesting. I didn't really think of it that way. I always think of these things in kind of that gift card model, where let's say that but even of course they even changed the law on that this year too. But that gift card model where it's like I've got this, I have this amount, and I need to use this by the end of next year, or else it goes away. But it doesn't. That's not necessarily the case.
Right. And some miles like Delta, they don't expire at all. So it's not as harsh as people think it is.
866-675-6675. We're talking with Brian Kelly, the Points Guy, founder of thepointsguy.com, about using your airline and travel points. Now, you mentioned that you can kind of pool these things and use them. I always thought that this kind of just went for airlines and flying, but you mentioned hotels and, like, I guess...
hotels are a huge thing. You know, I was just in Europe for 10 days. I used points for all my hotels, you know, especially
when is the last time you paid? I'm imagining, and I don't mean this to sound like a slight, but I don't imagine you're putting out a lot of your own money for these flights and hotels, because you've accrued so many points.
Right. When you accrue so many points, you redeem them a lot. However, I do actually pay for a good amount of flights domestically, because I keep elite status with an airline. That's a whole nother ballgame. Okay,
we'll get to that. And we'll get to that in a minute.
I do pay for flights, and once in a while I spoil myself with luxury hotels. That's my hobby. So like Four Seasons, they don't have a points program.
Right.
So once in a while I like to switch things up and splurge.
All right, I'm sorry, I just wanted to call you out on that for a second, because I was
okay. It's a good thing to be called out.
I was just wondering, but you can use these kind of incentive programs for hotels as well. You were saying
totally, cars, anything.
Rental cars, the whole deal. So if you play it smart, you can kind of spread these things around. If you maybe right, so maybe you don't. So maybe if you don't have enough to cover your whole flight, or if you have that points pool kind of thing, you could spread it out to maybe a hotel or car rental where your destination is.
And that's why transferable points really are extremely valuable. So
that's the good part.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Behind
Diversify.
it.
Yep.
Okay, now let's get into it. What is elite status? Why does everyone want elite? Because I've noticed several things over the last couple of years. Number one, on planes, it used to just be coach and first class, and now I don't hear the word first class anymore. I hear business class. Right, and there's this kind of when you think of that, what that is that it's the idea that it's the business traveler. It's the guy who travels a lot, the man or woman who travels a lot for business, and so they're traveling a lot, so they want to travel in comfort, and they have a little bit of they can afford it, and they want to have this level of comfort, and they don't really call it first class anymore, but really that's kind of what it is. And so there's business class when you're on the plane, but what is elite? What does an elite status mean?
Elite status is a program that most of the major airlines run, where if you fly with them a certain amount of miles every year, they'll give you free upgrades. So every time you walk on a plane and you look around in business or first class, most of those people aren't actually paying for it. They're just elite flyers that earn this status with the airline, and then you automatically get upgraded. Like, I'm a Delta Diamond, which means I fly over 125,000 miles a year with Delta. They upgrade me on all of my domestic flights a week in advance. Yeah. So I have a first class upgrade. Those are my favorite emails to get. You've been upgraded. I pay the cheapest fare. So I may be paying the cheapest price on the plane, but I'm sitting in first class because I have the elite status.
So it pays off. That's another great incentive program.
Totally.
It's funny. It makes me all think of the George Clooney film Up in the Air, because his character had like elite status for like the car rentals and the airlines, and his whole thing was that he was just trying to do business and fly as much as possible, and he was going to get some sort of special card where he could just fly anywhere in the world.
And that's real. There was some fiction to that, but
it was like if he traveled 1 million miles in the air per year, right? And of course that seems like kind of a fiction, but it was a jumping off point for the narrative of the story. But I just think of that's the person, that's who this business class and this elite kind of class, this elite status was made for.
Truly, yeah, and it exists today.
866-675-6675. We're talking with Brian Kelly, the Points Guy, about our airline points and frequent flyer programs. And one of the things that we were wondering about is the idea if you can transfer or gift or even will these points that you've accumulated to someone else in your family or a loved one.
So physically, transferring your points into someone else's account is usually very expensive. The airlines like to make a profit off of that. So what I recommend is you can actually book awards for other people from your account. So almost every hotel or airline program will let you book a ticket for someone else using your miles. So instead of transferring, just book it from your account. However, the transferable credit card points are extremely flexible. So if you have Chase or American Express points, you can instantly, for free, transfer it to anyone else. So your friend, you can shoot them a couple thousand points to top up their account so that they don't have to buy them from the airline.
All right, that's very cool. So, and that's with those transferable. Now, we mentioned that earlier. Are these the cards that let you pool?
Yep.
Is that what you mean? That's what that term is. It's transferable.
Exactly. I mean, I've kind of coined that term because there's no other real term on the market for them, but it's the American Express Membership Rewards Program and the Chase Ultimate Rewards. So as long as you have one of their participating credit cards, You pool it into a central account, and then you can shoot it off to different accounts.
All right. So it was American Express membership rewards program, and then the Chase Ultimate Rewards.
Yep.
Those are the ones that let you kind of pool it, and you can spread it to air travel or car rental or hotel,
or even gift cards,
give it to me. Or,
exactly.
Yeah, everyone can just transfer it to me.
Yep. It's
kind of like I should start my own little campaign. It's like, give me your miles, maybe, everyone. How about that? How long? I feel like Naomi, I feel like we've gone through this. I don't know if it was with you or another one of my friends where that you thought it was like you have just under enough miles to go somewhere. Maybe it was a friend of mine where she thought she was going to be able to. It was a good friend of mine. He thought he was going to be able to get a ticket, and he had he had done the math wrong where he would need to have gone on that flight that he was looking to get the miles. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like he was like
that flight would have given him enough miles to pay for that flight.
Right. And he hadn't thought of it, and he ended up being it was just a little bit short, and it didn't work out. So how long? And that's where we were kind of going with this. You wanted to mention was how long after a flight do your miles accrue to your account?
Usually they post these days, within a day or two. If you do fly airline partners, so each airline, or most airlines are in an alliance. So if you're a continental flyer but fly Lufthansa, sometimes it does take a couple weeks for that partner to credit over the miles. So I always recommend keep your boarding pass just in case you ever need to fight to get the miles.
Oh, hold on to your boarding pass.
Absolutely.
And how long after, if you're holding on to your boarding pass, how long after can you call in and cash those in? Is it, if you call a year later, or is it too little too late, or what kind of time period do you have there?
Yeah, each program's different. Like programs like Delta don't even have expiration. So once you earn those miles, they're there forever.
Okay.
So definitely check the expiration. But like I said, even if you only fly once and have the small amount of orphan miles, buy a single song to keep them active, and then over time try to build up that account by shopping, dining. I think dining's another big thing people don't realize.
Now, what happens when the companies that we're dealing with maybe have financial trouble? Because I don't know.
American Airlines.
Yeah,
Poor American.
I'm trying to. It's the nicest way I could do this and be possible. But what happens in those cases, like with American Airlines?
Okay, so what's important for everyone to know, even healthy airlines, miles aren't yours. They're technically owned by the airline. So at any point in time, airlines will change programs, and the concept is over time they become less valuable. So I always encourage people, use your miles. For some reason, people love to hoard miles.
It's like where they're not. What, are you going to wait for the trip to the moon?
Exactly.
Use your miles.
Use them. Yeah, use them. But in general, so with American Airlines, if an airline goes under, there's a chance that these frequent flyer programs actually make tons of money for the airlines because they sell them to the credit card companies. So if for some reason an airline went under, there's a very good chance that another company would pick up the loyalty program because they're generally profit centers.
Because it's a valuable thing to have.
And it's a currency. You don't know, the banks don't want that currency to dissolve. So, but in general, with American, everything's fine. I mean, American's got a long road ahead to get out of bankruptcy, but there's too many interested parties like Citibank who issues their credit cards.
Right.
Too many people are going to make sure that they come out.
So so if you have a rewards program through American Airlines or involving them, then you really shouldn't worry too much.
But like I said, use your miles. It doesn't make sense to stockpile them because no one knows what's going to happen.
The only instance where I think that it paid off for one of my friends to kind of stockpile them was that he had just kind of held on to them for a couple of years, and then his fiance is from Korea, and they took a trip to visit her family in Korea, and he ended up getting his plane ticket. And I feel like maybe hers as well. Maybe I think he paid for her entire plane ticket using the miles and points that he'd accrued.
Oh, and that's the best feeling in the world when you finally use them and figure out how. And
it saved them so much money because a round trip plane ticket, literally halfway across the world, costs quite a bit of money.
Totally,
and it can almost put a damper on the idea of traveling that way.
Yeah, and just think, when you got the plane covered, your hotel covered, your car covered, I mean, it really allows you to focus on the travel experience when you're there and doing those really unique experiences.
866-675-6675. We just have a few minutes left, and we're talking with Brian Kelly, the Points Guy, founder of thepointsguy.com. So what exactly, is this kind of all the things that you do on thepointsguy.com? It's like we just cover all these bases.
Yeah, I mean, I cover all the top promotions. So, Marriott just announced a promotion last week, and sometimes it's hard to tell, like, is this actually a really good deal? So I try in as plainest terms possible be like, I actually think this is a great deal. I have a top deals page on the site, which is all the top credit cards, all the top promotions. And I kind of give my, as an expert, I give my analysis to kind of tip people off. This is really a good deal. So yeah, it's travel. It's my travels. And
do you think what's more valuable, airline miles or hotel points? To the average, let's say to the average traveler in terms of like tourism and whatnot.
I mean, there's such a wide spread. Some hotel points are super valuable and some hotel points are horrible. Same thing with airlines. I think most people focus so much on flying, so I think airline miles do provide a lot of value,
right?
Especially if you want to fly first or business class, because those fares are just prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, with miles, it's so easy to book business and first class with miles.
Okay.
Because no one pays for it, so the airlines often open up the seats for awards, so you can fly around in first class. And I paid $50.
Well, I like that. I like what you talked about, how with that elite status, I think that seems like maybe the most valuable thing to have with these programs, because you can have that status, but then you're buying a regular ticket, but they're upgrading you as a reward for being a valued customer.
Exactly, and there are even credit cards that will help you get elite status. That's the biggest new trend.
See, I think it's all about kind of gaming the system in a certain way, like really just being smart about it and using these advantages to your advantage. Kathy's called us from Pennsylvania, Brian, at 866-675-6675. Kathy, welcome to Living Today.
Hi, how are you?
We're good.
My question is, if you do mostly domestic flying, which card is probably the best for that to get rewards back?
That's a good question. Honestly, I like like I said, going back to the transferable cards, because they allow you to transfer to all three different alliances, which means you can transfer, for example, with Ultimate Rewards, you can go to Continental, U.S. Airways. You can also redeem on Delta and American Airlines. So no one airline, and it depends on your airport. I would never recommend someone get a Southwest credit card if Southwest doesn't service their airport.
Right.
But once again, I think to get the max flexibility when it comes time to redeem, a Chase Ultimate Rewards or an American Express membership rewards card, and I implore you to research those programs. I do deep analysis on my site of the different transfer partners, but I think those are your best bet for domestic travel. And oftentimes these cards give bonuses. So right now there's a 30% bonus to British Airways. But what most people don't realize is British Airways is a partner with American. So you can transfer at a bonus and then redeem those British Airways miles on domestic American Airlines flights.
Okay, great.
All right, there you go, Kathy. I hope that cleared it up a little bit for you, and I suggest going to thepointsguy.com to look at those kind of more in-depth guides that you put up there, Brian. I think just about wraps. I mean, we've talked so much about it. It's funny. I came into this knowing zero things about airline miles and frequent flyer miles and these points rewards programs. But now I feel like when I go out tonight or the next time I'm out with friends, I'm going to start dropping these kind of like little tidbits of information.
You're going to pick up the bill tonight, aren't you?
Maybe I will. Maybe I will.
Let me know where you are.
I'll be at DBGB at 8 p.m. Brian, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on with us today here on Living Today. The website, once again, is thepointsguy.com, and also you're on Twitter. It's at @thepointsguy.
Yep.
And so I assume that you're equally as active in that respect.
Yeah, if you have questions, I always try to answer my Twitter questions. So tweet me, or I have a Facebook page as well. And
all right. Very cool. The Points Guy, Brian Kelly, thank you so much for joining us here on Living Today. When we get back from our break, we're going to be talking to our fine friends over at Best Buy about the hottest gifts for this holiday season. There's only a few days left, and you really need to kind of get on the ball, but don't worry, Best Buy will be there to help you out. 866-675-6675, that's our phone number. We're here at Living Today on Martha Stewart Living Radio, Sirius XM 110.